On today's episode, we are joined by Natasha Evans, which is a fertility expert and a nutritional therapist. And we're going to be covering how what you eat impacts your life on every single level, including your chances of becoming a parent, and delve into Natasha's journey of going from illness to health and purposeful life.
So I was struggling with my digestive health. The GP was being absolutely useless, not getting me anywhere. I was starting to notice that my mental health was starting to get really bad too. And I actually ended up getting depressed whilst in this tech job.
Should every woman in her 30s freeze their eggs?
Just egg freezing and just going through that process without doing the care beforehand to really optimize your health. I mean, that would just be like, throwing money in the fire. Sperm counts have halved, testosterone's decreasing by about 1% per year. And if it continues along the same trajectory, men will be infertile by 2045.
Welcome, Natasha.
Hello, thanks so much.
How are you today?
Really well, thank you. Enjoying the sunshine, long awaited.
Amazing. This is what everyone in London is living for.
Oh, totally. And being in Westminster as well and just seeing the tourists taking all their snaps. Yeah, it was
appreciating what we should be appreciating as well.
Exactly.
So I want to start with something that everyone is going to closely resonate with and benefit from really, which is the link between food and our health and our overall well-being. So with your experience over the years, what are the things that have emerged for you, most surprising things or most useful things for everyone listening straight away?
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's a great place to start. So I think everyone's now really aware of the fact that food impacts your health, and that's the study of nutrition. And just to start really broadly, so the reason why nutrition is so important for our health is because our food contains information. It contains nutrients. So things like vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, amino acids, glucose, fatty acids, all of those things that then do different things in our body. So they manufacture hormones, they power our immune system, they help our bowels move, they help our DNA replicate, they help us form really nice healthy cells like the egg and the sperm, they help our mitochondria work, which is the energy produced in all of our cells. So we're really relying on our diet to get all these nutrients in. And we can manufacture some of these things ourselves, but we are largely relying on our diet. So that is why diet is so crucial to our health. And therefore, if you've got a diet that's, under-indexing in some nutrients, then it's going to have serious knock-on effects on your health. So yeah, it's a really fascinating area. And I think people are becoming more and more conscious of that. I definitely live in a bubble whereby, I think people know all the things I know, but actually when you look at the general population, 60% of our diet is ultra processed, which means it's very far removed from nature and how we were designed to eat. So these are products that contain 10 or more ingredients in, most of which, you wouldn't use an ingredient in your own home. So they are created in a lab and they're actually very different from what our bodies are used to processing. And that in turn has a very inflammatory effect in the body, can lead to weight gain, can lead to metabolic disease, all sorts of chronic disease. And that's what we're seeing at a population level. So I think it's such an interesting area, and also how that then ties into fertility. I think, that's obviously where my passion is.
Oh my God, thank you so much for this incredible intro. And it really just lays out the baseline of why this conversation is important and why all of us, after listening to this, should really open the fridge and our cupboards and be like, what can I do better?
Totally.
Right? And basically what you're saying really resonates with me because my mom, she's a really, let's say, spiritual alternative medicine, different thinking person and figure in my life that's really had a good impact in my health and well-being over the years. But she always said this one thing: food is fuel.
Yes.
Food is fuel, and it makes sense, right? Because we need it every day. It gives us energy, but as you said, it does all of that myriad of other things. So you said something about the ultra-processed food, and you said 60%. Is that 60% of the food that's out there available for us, or is that 60% of the food that we statistically consume?
That's consumed.
I see.
Yeah. Higher in the US, about 65%.
So another question that emerged from what you said, inflammatory effect. That's the main thing that happens. Well, not the main, one of the things that happens when we consume these ultra-processed foods. Why is that? Is that because they are, as you said, synthetically lab produced, therefore the body isn't able to process them and therefore somehow inflammation happens? Or I'm just going in a wild guess here.
Well, firstly, when we're thinking about these things, we have to look at the scientific evidence we've got and then also look at what we don't have. And there's a lot we don't have. So if you think about how 60% of our diet's ultra-processed, actually the number of studies looking at the effect of ultra-processed foods on our health is actually quite limited. But the ones we do have now do show a very negative effect. The higher the amount of ultra-processed food in the diet, the less favorable the health outcomes and things like that. And the higher the BMI and all things like that.
BMI being?
Oh, body mass index, which is not like an amazing tool because you can have a high BMI and just have high muscle mass. So there are other ways of looking at weight too, but that tends to be the most used one in the NHS and things like that. So how does it have a bad effect on the body? Well, our diet has changed so much over the years, but particularly in the past few decades, because this is when the surge of ultra-processed food started coming about. So actually, our diet has changed so much in the past few decades, and our bodies have not evolved to keep up with that. And that's the same with loads of different technologies, which we might come on to later, how far removed we are from nature now, basically. So our bodies have not evolved to process these things like emulsifiers, stabilizers, additives, E-numbers, all these things that are very foreign. And it seems like the way they might be impacting our body can be through various mechanisms. So firstly, having a detrimental effect in our gut microbiome, which loads of people would have heard of now. So we know that our gut affects our immune system, our hormonal health, our energy, our brain.
Intuition.
Everything. Yeah, absolutely everything. It's our second brain. So firstly, through that. Secondly, through making the gaps between our intestinal cells more leaky, which is referred to as leaky gut, or intestinal hyperpermeability is the scientific phrase. And that means that things that shouldn't be leaking into the bloodstream are now seeping into the bloodstream, causing an inflammatory cascade around the body. And inflammation is a natural part of the immune system, but what's happening now is chronic inflammation. So the immune system is basically in overdrive, and that leads to things like weight gain, but also predispose you to pretty much every chronic disease. So all these modern day chronic diseases have, the vast majority of them have an inflammatory element to them. So yeah, this chronic inflammation is really making a difference. And then the other thing I would add to that is these synthetic ingredients in products and these very artificial products, they are adding extra load to our liver. So our body's always detoxifying, but actually now it's, our detoxification system is just slammed with work to do. And it's like a person. If you give them too much work to do, they're just going to do the job less efficiently, and it's going to build up that toxic load. So there are a lot of different ways that these ultra-processed foods are affecting us. But it's a real epidemic, I'd say.
Wow, loads to process. Loads to process here.
Loads to digest.
Loads to digest. And loads to come back on. So first of all, just paint some examples of what foods are we talking about. I mean, obviously, all the candies, chocolates, crisps, chips, stuff like that. What else is there? Maybe also the obvious and not so obvious foods.
Yeah. So most people be thinking about all the shiny, long shelf life packaged cakes and stuff in the supermarket, and that's 100% ultra processed. But some of the ones people don't think about are things like bread. So bread should really only be 4 ingredients. It should be flour, yeast, water, and salt. Now it contains, supermarket bread often contains 15 or more ingredients in. In the US, it could be 50 or more ingredients. Well, no, it's actually, what actually is it? Some of them are more akin to a cake rather than a bread, especially in the US. I mean, their food system is way worse than here. So bread, and that's actually the number one source of salt in the diet. It's not actually the salt that people add to food. It's actually supermarket bread.
Wow.
So that is a key one. Takeaways, deep fried foods, ready meals, which of course more people are falling on now because they're so time poor.
What about soups? Those like Tesco and Sainsbury's soups? I always look at them and I'm like, well, this looks pretty good. It just looks like there's the vegetables. How are those?
So it depends on the soup, right? So the soup you get in a tin might not be the best because it will probably have lots of things that make it quite long shelf life. maybe sugars and things like that added. The fresh ones tend to be okay. I mean, it's still, the more you can make yourself, the better, because normally in the supermarket, they'll be stored in plastic. So if there's anything acidic in there, it might cause a leaching of microplastics into your food. It might use more inflammatory oils. But in general, if you look at the back of pack and you recognize the ingredients on there, it's just vegetables, herbs, water, maybe some stock. That's all right. That's all right. But it's when you look at the back of pack and you think, hold on, what actually is that? That's when it's, really starts to become an issue, because you can really, increase the number of ingredients in your food through things like spices, and that's not a bad thing. Yeah. But it's really just those artificial things that we're worried about.
Okay, so what does that mean for the average person? Because there's always this battle between practicality and health, right? Even for myself, that's a constant battle. Now, something that I've been doing for the first time is that I have a busy period. I've started ordering the meal preps because I know that I don't want ultra processed food, even though it's, whatever, soups or whatnot. I maybe don't fully trust the takeaways and the deliveries, because also you don't know how they're cooking, right? Yeah. But I also don't have time to cook, which I would love to do. So I've now started doing that, and it's really working for me very well. But what about the average person who maybe doesn't have that availability? How can they marry this knowledge and their desire to be healthy with, practical constraints of time?
Yeah, okay.
And resources.
For sure. Yeah, it's a real problem. I mean, what we want to try and get people towards is as much unprocessed or minimally processed foods as possible. So really in the supermarket, you're looking at the first few aisles. It's the veg aisle, it's the fruit aisle, it's the fish, it's the meat, it's the eggs, it's that kind of thing. So as much, basing your diet off that for like 80% of the time is really, really optimal, and doing as much home cooking as possible. One thing that really works for time-poor people, or my time-poor clients, is actually batch cooking. So, at the weekend, if you've ever got some spare time, making a huge batch of food, using that during the week, and maybe jazzing it up in different ways throughout the week as well. Storing things in your freezer, maybe you've got a few meals in rotation in there. That can be a really nice way to do things. And even things like, pre-boiling a load of eggs at the weekend. So you can just add some extra protein onto your meal, have a high protein breakfast. That's really helpful, I think. And then with things that everyone eats, things like bread, even just making the swap from a supermarket loaf to a fresh loaf, which will have, 4 ingredients or so in, that's a great swap.
Sourdough.
Yes. Yeah.
It's good for us, right?
I'm pro sourdough. I'm definitely pro sourdough. So sourdough, firstly, again, it's using those nice basic ingredients. And then also the fermentation process, and it's normally fermented for around 24 hours or so, that makes it more digestible. So if you find that bread's the sort of thing that bloats you, sourdough can sometimes be a better option.
Noted. So to this point, one thing that I've always thinking about is there's so much information out there, right? I mean, everyone listening to this is going to be like, okay, what this time is going to be debunked from what I already know or think that I know, right? For me, what I've discovered is the intuitive eating or intuitive choice making around foods that I eat is probably the best thing, because the information that I get, sometimes it just doesn't work for me and my specific body. So I wonder if that's something that you've encountered as well, and that's something that you advise for people as well. Because, for example, even if I drink 2 coffees on an empty stomach because I want to do intermittent fasting, and that doesn't break the fast, I'll notice that I'm getting acidity. Like I feel not perfect, in my intestine, in my gut. And so I know that I should either drink, 3 times more water prior to that, or I should replace that with a tea, or I should just drink it after I've eaten. Like those are, for example, a silly example of something that's happening right now for me. But I'd love to hear your...
Yes. Okay. So 2 things I'll try and tackle here. I think the first one is around listening to your intuition around food. And then the second one is around the nutrition science and all the information out there and how we navigate that. So the first thing is, I think it's a great thing to listen to your body, because actually we all respond differently to foods, and we all have different needs based off our genetics, based off our current microbiomes, but based off where we live in the world right now and what season it is. So we actually all have very different needs. So I think if you can tune into that intuition and that interoception, just understanding what your body needs, then that's amazing. The problem with that is that actually our intuition is hijacked very easily by advertising, by big food. And so, for example...
really?
Oh, well, yeah.
Intuition.
Yes, as in the foods you think you want, that's hijacked by various other things going on, even your microbiome. I'll talk you through a few of those. So the first one is, they did this amazing, so I personally believe that your food choices have nothing to do with willpower, and obesity and being overweight has nothing to do with a lack of willpower. I don't believe that there is actually anything around willpower with food. It's all just like messages from the body being sent out to make you crave a particular food, and you reacting to your environment. So for example, they did this study with TfL where they changed the, they banned junk food adverts on billboards, and the reduction in junk food consumption in those boroughs was significant. So it's not just you, even if you're walking past a billboard and you don't even think you see it, something is plugged into your subconscious saying, maybe I'm going to have fried chicken this week. And you don't even notice it's happening. You know, we're so influenced by all these things. And that's just billboards. Think about social media. Think about all these other areas where we're exposed to potential things like that. So that's the first one. The second thing is your microbiome. So often we think our cravings are just us saying, I want some chocolate. But actually, it's our gut microbes sending signals to our brain saying, I want more of my favorite food. Can you go get it for me? So if you have an imbalance in there, then actually your cravings might be driven by that. And then the third thing I was going to say is that big food companies, they make their foods to bypass natural bliss points in our brain so that we want more of that food. So for example, this is why, you know, cakes, biscuits, even supermarket breads and stuff are so addictive and we want more of them. It's because they've been specially manufactured by food scientists to be really palatable, ultra palatable. So it's no wonder people find it so hard coming off these foods. So yes, ideally, if you can really start to tune into your body and your own needs, then that would be amazing. And for you, because you've done so much work on yourself, you know, maybe that is possible for you. But for the vast majority of people, it's going to be a much longer journey, because even if they are intuitive eating, the signals might be completely hijacked by so many different things.
Very, very valid point. I think I understand what you mean by that. So I by now can distinctly discern between a craving, which I know is just, let's say, if I've had a super carby beginning of the day, which I obviously love. God bless carbs.
Pancakes.
Everything. And then I know that it will keep rolling that way. Like I'll want more and more and more carbs during the day, and I'll want sweets. Like I know I'll want sweets. And I know that that's just the craving, and I kind of separate it from that, let's say, intuitive need of the body. So another thing that kind of stuck in my head since very long time ago was you can either eat for pleasure or you can eat for your cells. And great if those overlap, but your intention and priority always lies with one or the other.
Yeah.
So when I'm desiring these foods that I love, obviously, or, previously, I don't know, my taste buds have loved, then I don't always, most of the time, I'm not aware of this notion. But when I remember, I'm like, okay, wait. If I do this, I'm going the desire part and the indulgence part, but what about the body? What about the fuel? This is not fuel. Yeah. This is indulgence. So then I think it's a matter of how often we can just remind ourselves of this notion and then feed the body what it needs, feed the cells what they need in order for us to then do the things that we want to do from day to day. And again, I'm a big proponent of it doesn't have to be either or in life. All you have to do is ask the question, how? So how can that be food for my body and my cells, but also taste great, so I enjoy it? So, yeah.
It's all about balance. It really is. Most people don't know what balance is, but it is about balance. And I think, if you eat really well with those nourishing foods, that information of your body, that fuel, then about 90% of the time, then the other 10% of the time, I wouldn't even worry about it.
Yeah.
You've seen me indulge in loads of things. I mean, life is also about pleasure. I'm a big, I truly believe that obviously food is for nourishment and to be able to do all the things we can do, but also it's about pleasure, connection, celebrating cultures, making memories. Like there's so much more to food than that as well. So it's about getting that balance right.
Absolutely. And you know what? I was thinking about another thing that you said about majority of people not obviously having this awareness of what the signals in their body mean, what those inklings of desire mean, and where should they take it. What has worked for me, for example, and works on the regular, and I wonder if you working with your clients have seen that works for all the people, or is that just, for example, my own experience? I'm curious. When I fast, or even intermittent fast, after I've not eaten for, say, 16 hours or more, even 14 plus, I can feel you know how we wake up and we have a clean slate. The day is just about to start. The same way I feel about how my intestine feels and how my taste buds feel. So therefore, after I fast, both my stomach has shrunk and it's a clean slate for my taste buds. So I seldom, if not never, crave after fasting anything that's unhealthy. What I feel in my body is always a craving or a desire for something that is healthy, whether it's a juice, whether it's a specific vegetable or fruit, or maybe some specific protein, but it's always healthy. So I wonder, is that something that you've observed all the people get, or is that only after, let's say, they've gone through certain amounts of self-exploration and work and stuff like that?
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, firstly, how are your periods? Are they okay? Your cycles?
I guess, yeah, kind of okay.
All good?
Yeah, I don't suffer from great pains and stuff like that.
Yeah, and they're regular?
Mostly, yes. I feel like sometimes I have longer, like the cycle is up to 35 days, which is a bit irregular, but normally they are 5 days regularly, like as they usually are, and not a lot of pain, but I do get emotional and cry the day before.
Yes, as do we all.
Yeah.
So with fasting, some of my clients, it does suit them. So I think actually, in terms of weight loss, it can be one of the most effective things. Just that intermittent fasting, not long fasts, really. So it can be really good. When I'm thinking about fertility, I normally don't get my clients to fast. So definitely still having like a 12 to 14 hour gap overnight, but not really doing any more than that. Particularly for women, I find in my clinical experience that men respond better to fasting than women. Because our sex hormones, women need a bit more regular energy intake, which is why I ask about the periods. So some women I see who do intermittent fasting might have irregular periods, or PMS, or they might start losing their hair or something like that. So, but it's all about figuring out the thing that works for you. If you found out what works for you and you're feeling really good, then that's great. But for some people, it's not ideal. But what I would say is, so certainly in the fertility picture, because the body's always looking for a safe time to make a baby. So we want to be trying to show the body that it's safe. So you actually want there to be food. You want to be reducing the amount of stressors. And it also depends on how full your stress bucket is already, because fasting is another stressor on the body.
Absolutely.
So if your stress bucket's half full, then intermittent fasting is probably going to be great for you. If it's already up here or it's already overflowing, it's another stressor, and that's going to affect your periods. And most of the people I see in clinic are chronically stressed. So that's an issue. But one thing I would say about the cravings is, and maybe this is one of the things that's contributing towards your reduced cravings, is that once you start making these health changes, your body, your preferences can change quite quickly. It's hard to get over that hump. Then once you're over there, things change quite quickly. So your taste buds change, and things you used to find enjoyable, you might find way too sweet now. Your microbiome starts changing, which again means that the signals it's sending to your brain for its favorite foods, it's already going to start changing. So your preferences change really quickly, and even things like managing the blood glucose regulation, like you alluded to earlier, that has a massive knock-on effect in your cravings and what you're going to be wanting later on in the day. So once you rip off the Band-Aid and start to change your behaviors, then it does get a lot easier.
So what I wondered is specifically whether, let's say outside of the scope of fertility for, let's say we're talking about men here, but maybe also for women. But if say your bucket is low, you're not overstressed, you can afford yourself, maybe an occasional fast, not even regular intermittent fasting, but specifically, have you found that quality of waiting and stopping the feeding for X amount of hours, let's say, 14, 16, 20, 24, whatever it is, that after people give themselves that break, does that in itself give that clean slate, both for the taste buds and for the gut, for the craving?
I mean, I'm not sure what the mechanism is there, but I can think
because it really works for me. And I wonder for people that want to break that circuit of the bad, let's say, junk food. Because I'm by the way, I have a thing where I binge on foods. Like I eat a lot of like all those unhealthy foods. I've had a very, very long-standing, decade-long pattern of that. And so even if I'm immersed in this, bad streak of not eating great and just eating, a bunch of chocolates every single day for like a week, if I do this intermittent fast or it helps me. It takes me straight out of there. It's like a clean day. It's a clean slate for me. Whereas if I don't do the intermittent fasting or fast, then I kind of keep rolling in it. It's much harder. Then I need to kind of wean myself off of it by, trying to eat super healthy without eating the sweet there. So that's what I mean. It's been so powerful for me that I'm wondering if you've explored that with other people and if it works for others the same way.
Well, I actually don't know whether it's a direct correlation or whether there's something else going on there. So for example, we do know that intermittent fasting can have a beneficial effect on the gut microbiome. So I wonder if it's almost like having an indirect effect on your cravings that way. Or is there something in the fact that you haven't eaten for a while, so your body's sending out signals for things that are going to, give it the nutrients it needs rather than, something like that. So there could be something going on there. But in terms of sort of reducing appetite and things like that, yeah, absolutely, it definitely does help.
Yeah, it almost feels like I wondered about this so many times, and I wondered if because it's kind of that clean slate variation, and as you said, the body now really needs the nutrients. Like you've started it a little bit, right? So it is literally asking for what it needs, and that signal is so much louder what it needs rather than what your cravings want. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
it's almost like you've got a clear head, because I guess it gives you a clear head, right?
Yeah, it does.
But the thing is, I have seen it go in the other direction for some people too. So if they are maybe extending the fast for too long, and then they're so hungry, their blood sugar is so low, that obviously they want sugar or sweets, they want carbs. So it can go either way. And so I think it's evidently working for you, but for some people, they might not have that same effect.
For sure. Okay, let's move on. No, I was very curious. I was very, very curious about that because it's something that's really, really helped me a lot. And I wondered if,
amazing.
Maybe. Anyways, can you share with me some of the things that you've worked with your clients on that you've maybe been most surprised about between this correlation of not only food, but maybe also environmental impacts and other things that you found that has a direct, very strong impact on our wellness and well-being?
Some things I've been surprised about.
Yeah, some cases maybe that you've had and clients that you've had. I mean, obviously don't mention their names, but something very interesting that struck you that might not seem obvious for people.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the one thing I work on with all my clients is their circadian rhythm. So, sometimes they're quite surprised because they come to me, they're coming to see a nutritionist, and then basically in the first session, I'm like, what's your nighttime routine like? How often are you getting outside during the day? And they're like, can we talk about food, please? No, but basically my approach is really holistic. So it's not just looking at nutrition, it's looking at sleep, movement, stress, toxic exposure, all of those things, mindset. So we're looking at all those different areas. And I think getting your circadian rhythm right is probably one of the most important things you can do for your health today. And also one of the things that's so out of balance for so many people. So, your circadian rhythm is your sleep-wake cycle, largely controlled by two hormones, cortisol and melatonin, but it is much more complex than that. And so basically what happens during the course of the day is you wake up and your cortisol levels are at its highest level. So cortisol being the stress hormone, but it does lots of other things too. Melatonin, your sleepy hormone, is at the bottom, and that wakes you up in the morning. And as the day goes on, cortisol decreases, melatonin increases, and that puts you to bed at night. So the circadian rhythm just, affects whether you're going to be feeling refreshed when you wake up, how well you go to sleep in the evening, how well you sleep through the night, your energy levels through the course of the day. But what people don't realize is that your circadian rhythm also affects the optimal functioning of every single cell in your body, because our body is always looking for external cues to tell it what time it is.
Oh.
And the number one cue it's looking for is light exposure. So it's not just affecting your sleep-wake cycle, but if your circadian rhythm is out of whack, it's going to be having a significant knock-on effect on your health. So I work on this with all my clients then, and it's really about getting outdoors as much as you can during the day, preferably morning, because that natural light tells the body it's morning, it's time to wake up. But also middle of the day is also beneficial, even in the evening, just before sunset. They're all helpful in their own ways. But if you had to prioritize one time of day, first thing in the morning, after waking up, to tell the body it's time to wake up. And then the evenings...
So does that give you extra energy, I guess, during the day?
Absolutely. And it might be hard to do to begin with, because obviously people wake up, they might be feeling really groggy and tired. But again, it's like ripping that Band-Aid off. And even after 2 weeks of doing it, it becomes a habit. It's going to be, you're going to see the knock-on effects in your health pretty quickly. And then in the evening, as little artificial light exposure as possible after dark.
Do those little yellow filter lights on iPhone work? Do they do the job?
I don't know. I mean, there's still blue light coming out, but I think it might be a little bit reduced. The best thing to do is to get those blue light blocking glasses, which have a red lens, because then that actually filters out all of the blue light. My screen actually goes completely red now, but I think even though it does that, I feel like I think it still emits some blue light. I'm not sure. So that, it sounds really, really simple, but it's a really hard thing to change for most people's lifestyles. But it is, the health benefits you get from that are just, monumental, really.
Yeah, let's talk about what happens if you don't do that, because I guess everything is an opportunity cost, and in this case, for people to actually change their habit of something that they've been doing their whole life. As you say, it's a simple thing, but it's actually very hard to do because your whole life you haven't been doing that.
Yeah.
So it's a huge ask. So what happens if people don't adjust this? How does that impact?
So really just increases your risk for chronic disease, which is, so firstly, we all know now that sleep is so important for our health. So if the circadian rhythm is out of whack, it's going to be affecting the sleep.
The quality of sleep, not only the length of sleep.
Could be both, yeah. And then, so firstly that. Secondly, your mitochondria, the energy producers in your cells, might not be working as efficiently, because they sort of run off that circadian rhythm. They need that light exposure, and they need these things to be working really optimally. And that has a knock-on effect in so many different diseases, predispose you to so many different diseases, and fertility issues, because mitochondrial health is crucial for fertility. And generally you won't be feeling your best day to day. So it's about making sure, from optimizing your circadian rhythm, you're going to be feeling better day to day, but also reducing your risk of chronic disease. And also even it's been linked with, disrupted circadian rhythms been linked with obesity and being overweight. So it's not just about what you eat, it's about, your environment's so important too.
I love that you say this, because we all get into this habit of Band-Aids instead of medicine. And we just, these ads in the tube as well. Are you fatigued? This syrup or that whatever vitamin, and everyone's obsessed with supplements and everyone's obsessed with biohacking, but those are Band-Aids.
Yeah.
And where you haven't actually installed the floor in your house of your health, and the floor being literally the circadian, how do you sleep, like how long do you sleep, all of these things. And then I like to compare all the supplementation and all of that, as unless you have a specific disease where you're chronically lacking some sort of a nutrient, okay, in that case that might be your fundament, but otherwise those are literally like, it's the decoration. So taking everything step by step is just so important.
Exactly. I mean, if you're struggling with sleep, the number one thing I'd focus on first is the light exposure. 100%. Getting that right.
What about the Wi-Fi? and all those the EMFs and
Yeah,
everything.
EMFs. I think the research shows at the moment it's a really controversial area, but there is research to suggest that being close to like a Wi-Fi router or something like that can really affect your melatonin production and your sleep. So even just turning the Wi-Fi off at night can be quite a great way to support your sleep.
Which is where the don't hold your phone next to your head
Exactly
comes from, right?
Airplane mode, 100%, or put it in another room.
Can you explain why? Because my mom's been saying that since I was a kid, but like, to the people that are like, what?
Well, the EMFs. So they can keep you awake. They can suppress your melatonin levels. EMFs have a detrimental effect on our circadian rhythm. Firstly. Secondly, the light coming from your phone, again, that could, if you've got your phone facing up, the light in the room, again, could be affecting the quality of your sleep. And thirdly, if it's next to your bed, then you might be tempted to do a little bit of a scroll before bed,
of course.
Which of course is not going to be good again. And if you think about all that blue light that just suppresses your melatonin production, melatonin is not just important for your sleep. Melatonin is an amazing anti-inflammatory. So again, so important for our health and really important for our fertility as well.
Fertility, perfect. Yeah. We kind of like went a lot into the nutrition side, which I think obviously is very important for everyone. But let's go on to the fertility, which is obviously your expertise. What's up with the contrasting data? I sometimes, literally this morning, I was listening to a program, and the host there was saying, "Oh, we have an overpopulation problem." So whenever we're talking about let's say the resources of Earth, everyone's talking about overpopulation problem, whereas in reality we have a severe demographic decline in so many countries right now, and the predictions are to the point of extinction of certain countries and nationalities and populations because of this demographic decline. So what is in actuality happening with the demographic situation in the world, and how does fertility link to all of that?
Oh my gosh, that's such an interesting question, because like now I guess most of my work is focused around trying to get people pregnant, and I haven't really thought about the demographic things, but you're so right. And this is actually such an interesting confluence of my first degree geography and then nutrition. But yeah, I mean, my personal view is that we are overpopulated as a population. We are draining our energies, the Earth's resources, and depleting the ozone layer and doing all these things. But at the same time, on the other hand, I feel like we're entering a fertility crisis. Cases of infertility are just on the rise. 1 in 6 will experience infertility now. That is so
What does
high.
infertility mean? You cannot and will not get pregnant?
No. So infertility is defined as a year of trying to conceive with no success. So the 1 in 6 who might have infertility, some of them will get pregnant. So at the moment, that's how it's defined.
That's men and women?
So it's couples, 1 in 6. But you're just as likely to have a male factor in fertility as a female factor. So, previously there's been a lot of attention on women and their fertility, but actually we really need to focus on the men. Sperm counts are down 50% since the 1970s. 50%.
Means there's just less of.
They've halved. So men's sperm count is halved. And if it continues along the same trajectory, men will be infertile by 2045. It's like this. The likelihood is it's going to slow, right? So it's not going to continue along that line. But that's terrifying. That's Handmaid's Tale situation, So sperm counts have halved. Testosterone's decreasing by about 1% per year, which cumulatively, amounts to a lot. So it's fascinating, and still most men think they're the most fertile things in the world. And, there's still so much focus on women and female fertility, but male fertility is also in a bit of a crisis.
Why is this happening?
Lots of different reasons. So if you think about how much the world has changed since the 1970s, it's unprecedented. We already talked about how our diets are becoming ultra-processed, so very far removed from nature. Add to that so much pollution, more and more pollution. Add to that more and more toxins. Hundreds of new chemicals are developed every single year, and we're exposed to them. Women on average put around 200 chemicals on their skin every single day. Some of which will be fine, some of it which are not. We know they have endocrine disrupting abilities. They can alter our hormones. they're neurotoxic, they're carcinogenic. So all these things are happening, toxic exposure. We have hundreds of studies now on the effect of BPA in plastic on fertility, hundreds of studies, and the results are scary.
Because we are drinking microplastics every single day, right?
We are. And it's also heating foods in plastic. It's takeaways, with foods and plastics. It's all these things. Plastics, microplastics in our food. It's really hard to avoid. So it's that, it is chronic stress levels, chronic inactivity, people, not exercising, not moving their bodies, being sedentary. Being sedentary creates extra heat around the testicles. The testicles hang outside of the body for a reason because they're meant to be cooler than the rest of the body, but they're just heating, and that's affecting sperm production. Heating from being sedentary, heating from having phones in your pocket, heating from having laptops in your lap, from tight boxes, all these things. So people having less sleep than before, and women are having more and more anovulatory issues, so not ovulating and things like that. So there is so much going on, but basically, the reality is we're living in an unnatural world now, and fertility used to be the most natural thing in the world, but we're not living in a natural world anymore, and that's what we're dealing with. So it's about trying to help people. My approach is all about helping people reclaim more natural diet and lifestyle so they can, optimize their fertility, because, we're in a bit of a situation.
Wow. Well, we are, I guess, from the statistics point, on the verge of extinction.
Yes.
You laugh so you don't cry, type of thing. Wow, so much to unpack there. I guess I want to say, what can people do? But you already said it's just changing your lifestyle,
100%.
Towards something more natural. And
sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah. Where do we go after this?
Where do we go? I mean, I'd like to reassure you that the likelihood is it's not going to continue dropping along the same curve, right? I mean, hopefully it's going to just taper off. And we have loads of reproductive technologies available to us now. So we've got egg freezing, we've got IVF, we've got things like that. And another thing that is affecting our fertility is the fact we're trying to get pregnant later and later in life.
Is that a bad thing?
Well, it makes it harder, and that's just statistically true. There's a lot of focus on
because of women or men?
Both. There's a lot of focus on women's fertility dropping off a cliff at the age of 35, but actually male sperm quality decreases significantly after the age of 35 too. Right? So it's not just about egg freezing, sperm freezing if you want to do it too. And but the good news is there's loads we can do to support egg and sperm quality as you get older. So we know we can delay ovarian aging or slow ovarian aging. We can support mitochondrial health, which naturally decreases as you get older. Sperm regenerates every 3 months. So really your sperm quality right now is dependent on your diet and lifestyle for the past 3 months. So you can change that around really quickly. So there's loads of things you can do to support it. We're not screwed at all.
Okay, so you touched upon something interesting about kind of the aging timing of when people want to have kids. And that's definitely a trend. I'm seeing it all around. So what is kind of the cutoff period? I know it's individual, but let's say on average, the cutoff period that a woman can conceive and, give birth.
Well, I've got clients in their female clients in their mid-40s, so 46, 47. So it definitely is possible, but there's definitely a genetic element as well as to how late you can conceive. So some women would have to start trying earlier. So it does depend. But yeah, I do see women up into the mid-40s. It does get harder, but there are things we can do about it.
I wonder, actually, going back to what we were talking about earlier, we mentioned a lot of environmental and physical impacts on birth rates and generally people reproducing. But I wonder, what do you think on the fact that there's also this mental and psychological and, let's say, economical factor into that? So it's never been more expensive to have a child than previous generations. And also psychologically, I don't really feel like we're incentivized to have children either. Like there's so many mixed messages around what is a family, should you even have a family, especially less than so for men, I feel like. But for women, there's just no understanding what's really expected of you anymore. You're supposed to be the freedom fighter of your previous female, ancestral generations, and then you're supposed to be also the provider and protector of yourself and role model for the future generations, but then also a housewife, and then also a mother, but then also a bit too many things. And so I know when we're talking about the demographic decline in certain countries, Korea is set to be, I think, extinct by 2100.
Really? Wow.
To absolute extinction, because women are not choosing to procreate anymore, and they're actually there's a subgroup of women that are choosing not to interact with men altogether. But that's a different thing. I don't want to get into Korean culture, but that was just very interesting to read about. How much do you think in this global demographic decline we're having to do with the physical aspects and influences versus the economic considerations versus the psychological influence?
I mean, I think the amazing thing as women now is we have choices. So it used to be, you just get married, you have kids, and then you raise kids, and that was your life. Now we do have options, which is amazing. So now women can be career women, and we can travel the world, and we can have our independence, and we can do all these things, which is great. So that's obviously playing a part in a decision about whether to have kids or not. And then also, I definitely hear people are worried about bringing a child into the world as it is right now with technology and with, the depleting resources and all that kind of thing. There are just so many considerations. And ultimately, the people I work with are the people who actually want to have children. So, and they're often the people who've been struggling for a while. So they've had a few years of problems. But it's an interesting, I see a lot of sort of internal battles about whether people want to have kids or not, and what that means and how they'd end up raising them.
Yeah, to what you've shared in terms of the data, those people might be wondering, and they might be on the fence, and then when they decide, they might actually not be able to have kids, which is a harsh realization to come to grips with. And then I see a lot of parents and in my circles as well, and the financial struggle is incredible. And I'm talking about people that are really okay, if not better than okay. A neighbor in my previous apartment where I was living, she had 3 kids. She has 3 kids, and she said that to send each one of the kids up until uni, we're talking just education, will cost her £240,000 per kid before uni, like until uni.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
What?
Yeah.
So we live in a reality today where, at least in the developed world, having one kid is probably the biggest luxury, financial luxury, that you will afford yourself in your lifetime. So, and this is not obviously directed to you, but it's, I guess, more directed to, the governments. How should people be able to have kids? And why should women choose to have kids if there's severe career, economic, sustenance repercussions? At the very least, it's just like one of the million aspects, right?
Yeah.
So
it's an absolute minefield. Definitely at the age where all these things are going through my head, because I need to make a decision soon. The financial one is huge. Even nursery is like a salary.
I have friends. I'm entrenched in these stories, and it's stressful for me and their friends. I'm like, wow.
And as a self-employed person, I wouldn't give it up for the world being self-employed. I love it, but I want to, and hopefully, if I could, I'd want to breastfeed my child for a long time. And, be present. But that means I can't work, and I'd only get statutory pay from the government. So, which is measly. So it's like, it's a really hard.
The society is not
decision,
made
isn't it?
for you to be able to have kids.
No.
And so this is what we're seeing.
And the conspiracy theorist in me is wondering, she's
Yes.
like, yes, yes, we're going there. Okay, it's just like, are these things happening as a way of controlling the population because we are overpopulated?
Because we're now redundant because AI is coming in. And so therefore, there's no more need for us plebs to execute the meaningless tasks because there's going to be machines doing it. So the elite that is actually controlling and owning everything, it doesn't have the use for us anymore. And therefore, they want us to die so that they can use the last resources that are on Earth. Is that what you wanted to say?
It was not, but that's another good theory. Let's spread these.
It just came into my mind. It's like a realization as you started to speak.
Let's spread these far and wide. I was thinking, because, I do think we're overpopulated. And that's the reason why...
Let me send you those Korea articles first. Okay, tell me.
And this is why we resorted to things like factory farming and stuff, because we have to, fuel a massive population.
Is it because of that? Or is it because of economic gain?
And greed, 100%. But I do think the challenge of feeding the populations we have today is really hard, especially because there's so much land that is, you can't even grow stuff on it. So you have to have cattle. And I mean, it's very complicated, isn't it? Anyway, so we're overpopulated. So are they making it harder to have kids? So, to control the population in some way? Are we being, living these more artificial lives and encouraged to live these more artificial lives because, as a population control? I mean, who knows? But the conspiracy theorist in me is like, something is very odd here. I mean, why aren't we talking about this more? And, whenever you say, the people who want to live a more natural lifestyle are mocked. They are considered the weird ones, when actually that's just the way evolutionary we were supposed to live. So,
Yes. I mean, listen, what I'm hearing clearly here is, so we're completely attacked, physically from like air pollution, light pollution, noise pollution, toxic pollution, nutrient depletion,
processed food.
Name it. Like just the list goes on. So physically, we're under attack, and then psychologically, we are clearly under attack. Let's not talk about the masculinity, femininity, the images of the opposite sex being completely undermined. For men, the over sexualization and degrading of the female's image. For women, again. Devaluing of the male even role in their life and society, like it goes deep. And then the economical attack or starvation in terms of you being able to actually even have a child. I don't know.
There's a lot to unpack here.
I don't know. I really don't know.
But then also from an economic perspective, they'd want us to keep having babies, to keep growing the economy. Like really, we
unless
need
now
to...
with the robots and AI, it's not necessary.
Right. Okay, so maybe they're in control. Who knows?
Okay. This section of conspiracy theories today now is over. I hope you enjoyed. But yeah, I mean, they say conspiracy theories, but then they turn out to come true, and then nobody talks about it.
I know.
It's kind of just forgotten. Well, whatever. That's why everyone can use their own critical thinking, do their own research, and make their own deductions. We're not endorsing anything. We're just brainstorming here. So
we're just ideas people,
Yeah, we are ideas people. We're ideas people. But yeah, very, very interesting. Very, very interesting observations, I'd say. Let's bring it back to some practical things and maybe questions that everyone has on their mind, including myself. I'm 30. And so when is the time that one, let's say women in this case, should think about freezing their eggs or, I don't know, increasing their likelihood of conceiving a child later on if they want to do it later on?
Yes. Okay. So freezing your eggs. So really, the data shows that the earlier you freeze your eggs, the better the chance of you having a successful pregnancy in the future. So the sooner you can do it, the better. The thing is, in your 20s, you're probably not thinking about it, you know. So let's face it, most women are starting to think about it from the age of 30, maybe even, you know, maybe later than that. But the earlier you can do it, really, the better the success, the chance of pregnancy later on in life. There are many caveats to this. So firstly, if your diet and lifestyle is rubbish for the 3 months prior to egg collection, but even, you know, up to 9 months before egg collection, because the eggs are still being matured in that time too, then the quality of the eggs you've just frozen might not be very good. So an egg freezing process is deemed successful if you retrieve lots of eggs, and
How much is lots?
well, it depends on the age again. So they have different sort of benchmarks. So you have lots of eggs and they survive the freezing process. That's considered successful. But what they don't do is check for your egg quality, because checking egg quality actually ends up damaging the cells anyway. So, but it means that you might have frozen loads of eggs, but they might be terrible quality because you've been drinking loads, taking drugs, whatever it is, enjoying yourself. So actually, the most important thing to do if you are planning on doing egg freezing is to really optimize your health for 3 to 9 months beforehand. 3 months, I would say, is, you know,
1 year
great.
detox is what we're talking about.
100%. Really give yourself that time, because that's going to all support your egg quality and make sure you're freezing good quality eggs. Because really, you know, egg freezing is kind of sold as a way of ensuring you get pregnant in the future, but it's more of a gamble. It is a gamble because it really depends on how good quality your eggs are, how good quality the sperm is going to be that it matches with in the future, and then how well it implants into your body as well. And all of that depends on your health and your partner's health.
Is there such a thing as egg and sperm compatibility?
So the egg chooses the sperm. So we used to think that the fastest sperm wins the race. Now we know the sperm are normally
The
waiting.
sperm is rejected by the egg where it's not wanted. I see.
The sperm are normally waiting very patiently for the egg to be released, and then the egg is released and the egg attracts its favorite sperm. And actually, when they've done things...
How does it know which one is the favorite?
They'll try and look for the best quality one. So one with, you know, without 2 heads. So some of them. So now, get this, we're going off topic here, but so sperm morphology is one of the key markers of good sperm, and that means the shape of the sperm. And when you think about the shape of the sperm, you think of that nice little head and the squiggly tail. But actually, you can get ones with 2 heads. You can get ones with pointy heads. You can get ones with, like, you know, wobbly top bits and stuff like that. And the threshold for normal morphology on a semen analysis is only 4% of having been the normal shape. 4% being the normal shape. So all the rest will be all squiggly and like have 2 heads and like all this kind of thing. I know. And if you think about it, you need a good, nice, healthy looking sperm to actually firstly be like, you know, to swim well. And then to actually penetrate the egg. So the thresholds on the semen analyses are so low, they're not optimal.
Do they check that when they take sperm donors?
Yes,
Thank God.
They do. But really, the threshold for normal is so low. And so when I'm looking at clients, I want it to be optimal. But anyway, the egg chooses the sperm. And actually, they've done tests in vitro, so in labs, where they've put one person's sperm next to another person's sperm to see which egg they choose, which sperm they choose, and it's not always your partner's. So yeah, it's the egg is unbiased. The egg is unbiased and will go for the best sperm it finds. And yeah, savage.
Such is nature. Fittest survives.
Quite right.
Wow.
The egg is an amazing cell. It's visible to the human eye. It has 10 times more mitochondria than any other cell in the body, which are the energy producers. And that just goes to show how much cellular energy is needed for reproduction. So you need so much energy to mature an egg, to release the egg, for the sperm to swim towards the egg, to then fuse together and then multiply into lots of different cells. That's probably the most energy intensive thing your body will ever do from a cellular perspective. So yeah, the egg is fascinating.
Fascinating. Incredible. Wow. Very interesting. Do you think we have this intuition? Do you know how they say about the first fall in love from first sight, or I don't know, the connection or affinity or something, just that you physically can feel?
Yeah.
Do you think that has something to do with anything on a cellular level?
Maybe. And I'm just wondering again if there are just things that hijack our intuition as women as well. So, yes, maybe that intuition was always there about finding the right partner, but things hijack that intuition. So, for example, the contraceptive pill. This is not a conspiracy theory, this one. So the research shows that women are attracted to a certain type of man on the contraceptive pill and a different type of man when they're not on the contraceptive pill. And actually, I don't know how they measure this, but it's been proven that the contraceptive pill is a medication that causes the most divorces out of any other medication, because people come off the pill and they realize they're not attracted to that man anymore. So that's hijacking our intuition. Women are more likely
because it's messing with the hormones.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's actually shuts down your natural hormonal production.
Thank you so much for mentioning contraception. That's a whole topic that I wanted to get into. But before we get off of that, I think there should be a study where they observe which men are the most attractive to women. Like we literally just observe that and then they take their sperm and they check. I wonder if
I
it's
would
something.
Volunteer. I would love to see that. I would love to.
But imagine maybe there is something deeper, physical, and like intuitive that happens between our, reproductive cells.
Yeah, totally. And then also we know women can be attracted to the wrong men sometimes because of a trauma response.
Well, I'm sorry, but we say wrong. But we say wrong from a psychological, emotional, and like whatever happens next standpoint. So I feel like that's a little bit, do you know what I mean?
But what I'm saying is that, there are so many reasons why women might choose the wrong man, the contraceptive pill being one, trauma responses being another. There are lots of different reasons why we could go for the wrong man, but the egg will know. The egg knows best. So yes, that's why it'd be so interesting to see how well it correlates.
Imagine if they discovered some sort of a egg radar technology where you put in your egg and then you just go around and you scan around and then it shows that guy is the best for you. Yeah. That would be great.
But I've also heard of lots of women who get UTIs when they're sleeping with a man, really, really frequently. And obviously there's lots you can do on the hygiene side of things to try and reduce the risk of that happening.
The wrong man.
But sometimes it can be the sign it's the wrong man, yeah.
I've deducted that.
Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely. And that's something that we've spoken about with a lot of my friends as well. It's kind of your body rejecting that person.
Yeah.
I think, we need to lean into these body signals because body knows.
Totally.
Often before our brain knows, because how would it know? It only has the empirical evidence of its very short life and experience, whereas your body has the DNA of however long.
Totally.
Going back to contraception, thank you so much for mentioning that. So obviously, pill is one. There's the coil. I don't know what else there is. How do the different contraceptive methods impact women's health?
Oh, okay. So, yes, this is where I could get really unpopular, if I haven't already. But no. Okay, so the contraceptive pill is the most prescribed contraceptive. And what it does is it shutdowns our natural sex hormone production, so estrogen and progesterone, and it just gives us synthetic versions of the hormones. So actually, when women come off the pill, what I see a lot of the time is they can actually really struggle to conceive afterwards. So normally...
Forever or after?
No, for a certain period of time. But that length of time really does vary per person. It depends on how early you started the pill. Whether the pill was masking some underlying conditions like PCOS or endometriosis, something like that. So there are lots of different, so that can happen. So really, if a woman's wanting to try and conceive when she's on the pill, I would say come off it preferably like a year in advance, just to help things regulate after that, because basically everything needs to reboot. But also the contraceptive pill, we actually have loads of research on this now, but it's often ignored. And when I try and speak about this on Instagram, I get warnings from Instagram saying that, there are no known side effects of the birth control pill and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah. So when you're choosing clips to put online, I wouldn't put this one on because, as in like on Instagram, because they are, the fact checkers are watching. And anyway, we know that the pill depletes lots of really key nutrients in the female body. So things like B vitamins, magnesium, and some of the nutrients that it tends to deplete are the ones that are really important for fertility. So another reason why it can really affect our fertility afterwards. We also know it can affect our gut microbiome in a negative way. It can contribute towards intestinal hyperpermeability, leaky gut. There are lots of different things it can do. Again, most of this is ignored by the medical community. Women are gaslit after coming off the pill. I see loads of women who haven't had their periods come back after 3 years. And it's really tough. So I'm not a big fan of it. I was on it myself for about 8 years. One of them drove me absolutely batshit crazy. The other ones I tolerated a little bit more. But yeah, it's, it is actually a privilege that we've got this at our disposal, because it really has helped with, women being more sexually liberated and things like that. So I'm not fully bashing it. And some people actually have an absolutely fine experience on it and after it. It's really this sort of individual response. I think the issue is that we're not giving our informed consent when we say we want to get the pill. We're not being presented with all the information we need to make that decision. We're just being told, it's pretty safe to take, you've got a small risk of whatever, but it's not really laid out. And, it's a legal requirement to be able to give your informed consent. And I don't think we're given enough information to do that. So, not my favorite. Yeah. The coil, I think,
Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's such a strong push, or there was historically such a strong push for this to be pushed out?
Well, pharma.
Doing pharma. Okay, yeah. Next.
So the contraceptive where it takes the longest to conceive after taking it is the injection. And I actually don't know why that is.
Sorry,
but,
what injection?
So it's another type of contraceptive. It's an injection you do, I think it's once every 3 months or something like that. But the research shows that people coming off that take the longest to conceive. So for people who are using condoms and stuff, it's normally about 4 months on average to conceive. Coming off the pill, it's about 8 months, and then injections 18 months. So it's like a really long time.
Sorry, the injection is for women or for men?
Women.
For women. And what's in the injection?
Some sort of collection of hormones, probably estrogen, progesterone, or something like that.
Okay.
I don't know. So
what about, I'm sorry, did you say condoms?
Yeah, or basically, not using hormonal contraception or something like that. That's the people who haven't been on any sort of contraception, just using either, natural cycles or condoms or something like that. Normally, they've got like a 25% chance of conceiving in a cycle. So take about up to 4 months to conceive.
Gotcha. And so what about the coils?
Yeah, I think they are probably those would probably be my contraceptive of choice, because they are, they stay up there. They're very easy to use. They don't rely on you taking something every day and being really reliable with that. The Mirena coil has some hormones in it. So again, I'd recommend coming off that to help your body regulate quite a bit before trying to conceive. The copper coil is my personal favorite because there's no hormones in there. So you still actually have normal cycles. And on the pill, those forced bleeds are not periods. So you haven't had a cycle for however many years you're on the pill. So on the copper coil, you are having proper cycles. Obviously, some people can experience heavier bleeding, particularly in the first year. So if you did have terrible cramps or periods before that, probably not the best one for you. It can be quite awful. For me personally, it's been great. But one thing I would say about copper is that it displaces zinc in the body. So I'd normally think about zinc supplementation. And zinc is really important for fertility as well. So again, whichever one you're on, it's good to just give yourself a good period of time to come off that if you want to start trying to conceive afterwards.
So what sort of contraception is there for men if women didn't want to take anything? Or is it just the condoms?
Condoms, which lots of men don't like. And then there's the male birth control pill, which has been having trials, but the side effects have been not the best, depression and things like that, which are all the same things that women get on the contraceptive pill. So I'm not sure where the trials are at with that now, whether it's something that men can take now, but it wasn't very well received, put it that way.
I see.
Vasectomy is the other option as well, which is mostly reversible if you decide you want to have kids.
It is reversible?
Yeah, so in some cases there might be some sort of error, which means you won't be able to conceive afterwards, but it is reversible, yeah.
Interesting. Just to go back to the topic of egg freezing in the right timing. So you said the sooner the better, but actually it's all about the quality of it. And so you need to take great care in preparing yourself. So is that kind of should every woman in her 30s, if she's not planning to have kids within the next 3-4 years, but maybe when she's like 35 or 36 or God knows, should everyone freeze their eggs?
So it's really hard to say. And I think lots of women are pushed down the egg freezing route too quickly because they see they've got low AMH, anti-Mullerian hormone. And then they're told, oh, you really must freeze your eggs. So pay thousands of pounds. And I think some of these clinics...
Because it's expensive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It is expensive.
How much is it?
Thousands of pounds. And it gets more expensive at some clinics after the age of 35 as well, because they need to do more rounds of egg collection. But I would say, I mean, if you know you're going to be with a partner and planning on trying to conceive around the age of 35, 36, I probably wouldn't even bother freezing your eggs. I would just really, work on optimizing your health before trying to conceive, optimize your supplementation. I kind of don't think there's any point unless you know there's something you've got like a health issue or a genetic issue, which means, you need to do it sooner than necessary. If you're planning on conceiving in the next year or two, again, wouldn't bother with egg freezing. But if you do think, you need some time to find a partner or something like that, it's probably a good idea. But again, just egg freezing and just going through that process without doing the care beforehand to really optimize your health, I mean, that would just be like, throwing money in the fire. So you really want to make sure you're optimizing your egg quality before doing it. Otherwise, it's just not a guarantee. It's not.
And how long do the eggs stay? And another question, egg or embryo? Where should you?
Embryos have a better success rate. So if you do have a male partner and you're able to sort of fertilize those eggs and freeze the embryos, then that's the best way to do it. But if you don't have a partner, you're just gonna have to freeze your eggs unless you get a sperm donor. How long they can stay frozen for? I don't know how long they can stay frozen for. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, I want to now ask you a little bit more about yourself. We kind of literally immerse ourselves into the juicy topics that are very interesting and very, very useful. But I wanted to ask, how did you get into this? I know you worked in tech and private equity and management consulting. So how did you end up here today doing this?
So yeah, did that usual thing, come out of uni, corporate job, pretending to like it. And
as one does.
Yes. And then I was in a job, I was working in analytics at a tech company. And it was not my zone of genius. I'll be honest, I was not good at it. And I didn't like not being good at it. And meanwhile, I'd had IBS for sort of 8 years or something, so irritable bowel syndrome, which, 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 people have. And so I was struggling with my digestive health. The GP was being absolutely useless, not getting me anywhere. And I was starting to notice that my mental health was starting to get really bad too. And I actually ended up getting depressed whilst in this tech job. So, which was, it's like I don't know if you've ever had depression, but it's such a weird feeling. It's like walking around with this permanent black cloud over your head. And even though you still love people, it's like your heart just feels empty. It was clearly depression. It was such a weird feeling. But I'm very thankful I had it, because during that time I was like, what do I want to do with my life? I know I want to help people. I want to help them live in good health, which I don't feel like I have right now. I love food. I'm just obsessed with food. And I know what I'm doing right now is not what I'm strong at. I'm really good with people and, forming relationships and stuff like that. So then I just thought, wow, nutrition kind of ticks all of these boxes. So I retrained for 4 years and became a nutritionist. My depression only lasted a year, thank God. So I'm really thankful for that. I feel very lucky. And during that difficult time, I really found my calling and, fixed my health issues and, just no regrets.
I love that. And I have one question, I guess, that emerges. Do you reckon that depression comes often for people when they are in disalignment with their true desires and with their true selves. So if they're kind of living a lie in a way and not respecting, you know, their intuitions, their callings, their passions, and kind of start living this someone else's life, then that's something that kicks in. Do you reckon there's a correlation?
I can't speak for everyone else, but for me, that was certainly what it was. So I was very outwardly confident when I was younger, but inside I was really insecure and desperate for the approval of other people. And the reason I think I tipped over into depression, I mean, firstly, it was definitely things from my childhood and stuff like that just catching up with me. But also it was just, I wanted to be everything to everyone. And it got to the stage in my life when that was starting to crumble. I was really still trying to, which was so draining. Like, it's so energy intensive trying to please everyone. But it finally got to the stage in my life where I had so many friends, I could not fulfill all of their needs. And bit by bit, they started getting disappointed in me for something, and that really, really challenged me and hurt me. And then I remember the exact trigger. It was like I couldn't go to a friend's birthday party or something. They just got so mad at me, and that just slapped me into it. But it'd been, you know, cumulatively leading me that way anyway. And thank God it did, because I'm so glad I didn't live a life like that anymore. Like, it's so draining being a people pleaser, and also just like that constant insecurity. You know, you're scared of being cheated on, and you're scared of, you know, you're always thinking about that thing you said last night because, you know, you're worried you upset that person. Like, it's all consuming, and having that depression. And I was on antidepressants only for 3 months. And for me personally, they were amazing. It was like the cloud lifted, and it just gave me that clarity to really work on myself. So only for 3 months, I mean, basically during those 3 months, I had the energy again to really go into mindfulness, meditation, all these things that I'd kind of grown up with in a Buddhist household, but never really implemented myself. And yeah, helped me change my habits. And it was such an interesting period because I really identified with being the fun party girl, always organizing the best, you know, things and bringing people together and, like, you know, being really happy and like, wee, you know, all these things. That was my identity. And when that started to crumble and I was doing all this sort of introspection, like learning about myself, I was like, who am I? And I think only this year I've actually got really comfortable with who I am. I mean, you know, it's been gradually getting better, but this year I feel way more comfortable. And I'm also like not even putting that much pressure on my identity. It's like, I feel like, you know, with social media and stuff, sometimes there's a real pressure to, like, you know, stand out and like be this identity. But actually now, I kind of know who I am, but I'm also open to the fact that that's changing every year. I'm not getting attached to an identity because that could go and that could, you know, come and go and stuff like that. So yeah, it's, yeah, I'm really thankful for having that period of my life, for sure. I think I'm lucky.
Thank you for sharing that. And I always love hearing so much, because that happens with every single person, that it's the tough moments that really paved the way for the most beautiful moments later on. So it's with time, as you see this correlation between the, let's say, the positive and the negative, you start to almost embrace and welcome the tough moments, because if you have this notion, you already know, okay, in present moment, this feels bad, but this is the direct bridge to a future that's very good. So that's a really nice way of, I think, looking at it. I also like that you said that the antidepressants for you were kind of a helpline, like that saving life vest, because oftentimes there's a big stigma around, you know, not going on them because A, they're addictive, and two, you're not your own person anymore, technically speaking. And so and so and so, but clearly, as from your story, you know, there is a place for them. There is a clear use for them. So it's just a matter of, you know, how you navigate and what you do with that lifeline. You know, how do you then utilize that fresh breath and And for you, it was creating these new habits and changing your mindset and instilling a new foundation that then allowed you to continue that more positive page that you started. Yeah.
And I think also when you operate in this holistic health space, sometimes it's, sometimes people can go down very much down the anti-medication route and stuff like that. But I think, whilst I do believe that, we should live a life that's more akin to how we were designed, like evolutionarily to live. We have to take advantage of the fact that in modern day life, we've got all these things that can help us, like medications, like, things like red light therapy. That's just something that didn't exist before, but we know it can help us, or hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So technology has actually created loads of great things to help us navigate the modern world and the modern problems we have. So it's not an all or nothing approach. It's that, that was a real game changer for me.
What do you think is your purpose?
Ooh, my purpose. So having experienced poor health and knowing how all-consuming that can be, my purpose is to help others understand their bodies and be in good health so that they can spend more time doing the things they love with the people they love. That is definitely my work purpose. And I truly believe that, when you're in good health, you do live more. But I think I do have a different personal purpose. And the only thing that comes to me is just love. Like, I have so much love to give, to you, to my friends, to my partner, to my family. I have so much to my clients. I've got so much to give, but I also want to receive it too. And I honestly think
that's what... Give to givers.
Yes. I think love is, why we're all here.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's, I don't know, I go through life and I meet a lot of amazing people. And I always wonder, there's just these people that are so energetic and they just never seem to be running out of their 1,000 watt smiles and, their energy. And I always wonder, what is their secret? Like, what's behind it? And I'll tell you when I do research big enough. But something that a lot of those people have in common is, I think, the energy and intention and that combination of it. I think intention attracts energy. And that energy is what's perceived by other people around you. So, yeah. Intention, energy, other people's experience. So, love for life. Love for life is definitely one. Love for other people, I find, is something that a lot of people do have in common. Those amazing people that stand out to me. And it's not obviously, I'm talking from my own experience because, I can only live through myself, but I would speculate that it's always a typology of people that stand out to people, really. And those people that stand out to other people, they are people that lead with their energy. And I think that energy is fueled by a certain intention.
I was going to say it's energy. That was the first thing that came to me. It's like, you can just feel that. I'm very sensitive to other people's energies too. Yeah, we talked about this the other day when we met up, isn't it? It's like you want to spend time with people who are going to be raising your vibrations, crumbling, and...
Yeah. So interesting, actually, on that word, we gravitate naturally towards people that are in resonance with our frequency, with our energy, right? This is why we kind of gravitate towards each other. And then you said raising our frequency,
vibrations,
raising our vibrations. And it's interesting because now thinking out loud about it, isn't it just purely the quality of doing 2x, so doubling on your frequency, on your vibration, and therefore you feel the expansiveness and you feel energized. But what simply has happened, you've just met somebody on that same frequency in a world, or maybe in a room, in a norm where other people are not. And so all of a sudden, when you meet a match, an energetic frequency, vibration, whatever we call it, match, that's the 2x. And that's the doubling, and that's the that perfect sync, and that sync energizes both people.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Because it's not about finding someone whose energy is better than yours, because that doesn't exist.
No.
But yeah, it's about that compatibility. And it's actually kind of like when a sperm meets an egg. Because I don't know if you've seen images of this, but we can actually capture on like video image now what happens when a sperm meets an egg, and all this light is emitted. How beautiful is that? It's caused by zinc, which you need a lot of for fertility. But it's actually, I think it is kind of like when two people with matching energies meet. It's like this fission. It's like this vision of energy.
100%. You're doubling on your frequency, and therefore you're merging with that same frequency, and therefore the amplitude is expanded, and therefore the strength is increased.
Exactly.
Okay. I wanted to ask you also from a little bit more of a business perspective, I guess. So you've tried plenty of kind of different things, as we said, a little bit of tech, a little bit of, now you're running your own business, your own company. How has that experience been? And I guess what could you recommend to people that are on a similar journey where they've discovered their passion, but they either have to leave or will have to leave, a safer job? How has that transition been, and what can you advise people?
Oh, wow. I was very lucky. So the job I was in, they let me scale, so I could start my business at the same time at the weekends. And then I went down to 4 days a week, then 3 days a week, then 2 days a week, then one day a week. So I was very lucky with that job, and they were really amazing in helping me through that. And I think that is, unless you've got the real financial backing to do so, I think that's such a nice way of doing it, because then you've got that safety. Still got that safety, and within that safety, you can grow. But I would say, I'm a big believer that relationships are the biggest teacher in our lives. They show us the shadows we've got. They show us the shadows we've got and what we need to work on. But I actually think now, since starting my business, that it's almost on a par. I think the next best thing you can do to really show you where your shadows are and the things you need to work on is setting up a business.
Ooh.
Oh my God. It just reveals all these things of God, I thought I'd worked on that, and now it's back again. So it's the people-pleasing tendencies. I've got so many clients to please here, but so it's about trying to create that separation between their results and you. All you can do is guide them, but actually they're still responsible for everything they need to do. And then also, when you're marketing, not caring what other people think about you, and
ego, patience, validation, competition.
Totally. And then also,
resilience, procrastination, energy, motivation.
It teaches you so much. It's every time it's
Yeah.
It's still, some things have still got their vice and their grip on me. But I've worked with loads of business coaches, and I think, I'm a big believer, invest in yourself. And, if you can't invest in yourself, then how do you expect anyone else to invest in you? And, you really see the dividends when you invest in a good coach and work on yourself. But the coaches I've worked with, some things have really resonated with me, which is the more time you invest in understanding yourself, the better your business is going to get. So having a business has made me get really clear on my values, which I'd never really thought about before, got me really clear on my values. And now I can live those values in my personal life and in my business. And when you're coming from that place of authentic expression, you're magnetic, right? And so I would just say to anyone who's on that journey, invest in coaches. Always keep investing in learning. I'm always doing more and more courses, just don't. Anything you invest in yourself is going to pay dividends in the business. And it doesn't mean that it's just business coaching and things like that, but it's doing things for your well-being, going out and doing whatever it is, like ecstatic dance, or for me, it's the allotment and things like that. But I have my best ideas when I'm out doing these things and doing creative things, and ideas for my business come to me. Everything I do is kind of gives me ideas and helps me be creative for my business.
I love that, what you said, that literally every single penny cent. What do we?
You're rich now. They all dropped.
It's just the best invested money is the money that you invest in yourself, because it's going to keep paying dividends throughout your life. Beautiful, beautiful. And something else that I wanted to ask you is you've touched upon kind of the polarities of your personality and how, being so multifaceted and on one side, maybe being foodie, but on another side being like health enthusiast, and having many those sorts of different polarities in your life, how that actually makes you feel more yourself and allows you to be more authentic. So you mentioned something about science and spirituality and how they actually complement each other. So can you speak on that?
Yes. So I absolutely love being a complex human being. I think when I was sort of struggling with my identity post-depression and being like, who am I now? Now I've landed in this place where, gosh, you don't have to be in just one camp or the other camp. It's like you can. There's this beautiful grey area in between. So yes, I'm really interested in natural lifestyles, but also I'm gonna watch TV as well. It's like you don't have to be just one thing or another. And with the science and spirituality, I think so. I am a spiritual person. Grew up in a Buddhist household, and I'm not a Buddhist myself, but I believe in the sort of principles of Buddhism. And I'm really into my meditation, my qigong, and experiment with psychedelics and things like that. So, and I think previously spirituality and science used to be seen as completely separate entities, but since the 1990s, they've started to come in. So firstly, science is trying to prove spirituality, which I think will never fully get there because some things you just can't measure in a lab, and spirituality is probably one of those.
Because we haven't gotten there at all. We just don't have the tools.
Exactly. But we are seeing incredible developments in it anyway. So for example, with quantum mechanics, we now know that one particle can be in multiple places at the same time. How? So what's happening right here to this particle could be affecting a particle somewhere in space.
One is all.
Exactly. And that's been proven, and it's Nobel Prize winning. And if you think about the Big Bang as well, how everything was together and then all went apart. Does that mean that all particles are actually related? But, this is like not pseudoscience anymore. And I think the more we go into the quantum mechanics field and stuff like that, the more we realize how little we know and also how little can actually be proven by science. Because we also know from it that as soon as you study a particle, it will
alter
change
its behavior.
Exactly. So as soon as you study something, the thing has changed. So it's absolutely fascinating. And I think this just gives us ideas about how these things can work in tandem. And for example, one of the meditations I was brought up doing is a loving kindness meditation. They call it metta in Buddhism, which is where you send loving kindness to yourself and then you send it to all beings. And maybe if there's someone who's particularly annoying you, you'd send that person too. And it genuinely works. But they've actually studied people now, and I will butcher this study, but it was done in Hawaii on some indigenous people out there, I think. And they put one set of people in one lab and one set of people in another lab, completely separate labs, and study their brains. And this lab had to send loving kindness to this lab. And every time they sent loving kindness, their brains flashed up. And they're in completely separate labs. And it was at random times. Right? Every time I hear it, I'm shivering. And how incredible. So we know that it can happen. We still don't know why, and we'll probably never know why, but quantum mechanics maybe can help explain that. But I just think, all I ask from the people I interact with, even if they don't believe the same things I believe, is just curiosity. Be curious as to what the things I talk about, and don't be judgmental. Curiosity is one of my key values. It's like, asking why rather than coming from a place of judgment. And it's just like, meditation wasn't even proven in science to be beneficial in science until the past 10 years. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
It doesn't mean we haven't been doing it. It hasn't been working most of all.
Exactly. So science has got a long way to go. We might never prove anything with science. And I think that's just absolutely beautiful.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. I guess I like to ask this question because people always surprise me with their answers. If you had to share some really close to heart learnings or lessons that you've been carrying with yourself through the decades, what would those be? Something that really has helped you or has changed you, or that you'd like to share with people?
So the first thing, 3 important life lessons. The first thing is to learn how to surrender. So yeah, definitely one from personal experience there. I really like to be in control of everything and try and control outcomes, which is just impossible. You can't do that. And really learning to surrender to life and like let go of that control, I think is unbelievably beautiful and releases a lot of stress. So I think surrendering is, learning how to surrender is important. And especially when we're thinking about like the polarity of firstly taking back control of your health and your fertility, but also surrendering to the experience as well. I think it's quite interesting. But so I think surrendering and letting go is the first one. The next biggest lesson is this was from a book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Seek first to understand and then to be understood. One of the best things I learned. I think so. There are so many poor listeners these days, but actually, if you can just listen, and you're a great listener, obviously, because you have a podcast. But yeah, I mean, I think I don't need to say any more on that. It's just, it speaks volumes. And the third thing I would say is to spend as much time in nature as possible. It's how we were designed to be. We were designed to be outside. We were designed to be moving. We know that there are shapes that exist in nature that you don't get in urban environments, things called fractals and things like that we know are instantly calming for our nervous system. And the smells, the sounds, the shapes, everything we get in nature, it's incredibly calming for the nervous system. And, that's my whole ethos, reconnecting with nature. So
love that and support that wholeheartedly. I agree. Get out there, guys. Listen to this or watch this whilst you're going in a park or something. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, friends. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe and share it with someone. I would love to hear your feedback and suggestions as to what guests you would like to see on the show next. See you next week.